This video is sponsored by King of Card Fight. For more information on tournaments, deck lists, or setting up your own King of Card Fight tournament at your locals, go to kingofcardfight.com. Hello again, friends. Today we're covering the topic of targeting. This topic includes when targeting occurs, public and non-public information zones, and mandatory and optional effects. The thing about targeting is that each of these subjects are interrelated and can't really be discussed one at a time. So let's start with when you choose a target. Well, that actually depends on where you are targeting that card. This ties back to public versus non-public information zones. If a card is in a public information zone, you declare your target upon declaration or activation of an ability. This means that you target before your opponent gets a counter timing. If a card is in a non-public information zone, then you select your target upon resolution of the card effect after your opponent's counter timing. So how do we differentiate between public and private information zones? Well, it's actually very simple. If a card is in your hand or in your deck, it is private. If a card is anywhere else, it is public. It may come as a surprise to some people that Gauge is not a private information zone. This is because Gauge is actually considered a face-down card that is a singular resource, so it is a public information zone location for this reason. It is a face-down card, not whatever is on the other side of it. This is why cards from other worlds still count as Gauge, even if they have no information when flipped over. That covers when you target. Let's cover valid and invalid targets. If an ability has a valid target, you must select a valid target. If an ability has no valid targets, you may still resolve all other aspects of that card. For example, cards such as 100 Demon Sorcery Ryuboku Shihai say that you need to target a size 1 or less monster and destroy it, and you gain 1 life. You gain that life even if you don't have a valid target to destroy. Let's go through a few examples of this. A Demon Lord Asmodai enters the field. There are no other monsters on the field. Demon Lord Asmodai must target himself with his own effect. The discard cost is still optional, but the targeting is not. Asmodai must target himself in this case. A White Dragon Hermit Nanase uses its effect to target 1 Gauge on your field. You respond by spending that Gauge that was targeted for Death Grip, targeting Nanase. This results in Death Grip destroying Nanase, and Nanase, because its ability is non-optional, being forced to pay the mandatory cost of 1 soul to destroy that Gauge that was targeted that's already been spent. A Super Armor Dragon, Gargantua Blade Dragon, activates its effect, which says that you must discard a weapon from hand. If you do, you destroy a card on the field. What happens if you have a weapon in hand? What happens if you don't have a weapon in hand? Well, interestingly enough, this card cannot have a mandatory cost because its cost comes from a non-public information zone. This means that even though the weapon discard is mandatory, and even if your opponent knows that you have weapons in hand because you added them to your hand through the card's effect, you can still choose not to discard because there aren't any burden of proof mechanics for the game. While this is silly, and I've been trying to get the card errated for a while to say you may discard, this is actually how it plays because of public versus non-public information. Unfortunately, while absolutely every other card in the game that targets is consistent with these rulings, there is one exception. Champion Wrestler Asmodai. Its skill targets multiple times, which is why Bushiro decided to have it target upon resolution after you've discarded all of the cards that you wish to discard. Finally, there are a few situations one should keep in mind about not targeting versus targeting. One example is Demonic Demise Dragon Azi Dahaka versus Art of Item Blasting. Azi Dahaka's ability states that he destroys all items. Destroying all items doesn't require targeting of any of them, and will destroy whatever happens to be on the field upon the effect's resolution. Art of Item Blasting has to choose an item on the field to destroy. This means that if a Legend World player chooses to respond to Art of Item Blasting by equipping Divine Protection Pridwin, neither Pridwin nor the item returned to their hand will be destroyed. Conversely, if this is used in response to Azi Dahaka's destruction ability, Pridwin will end up being destroyed. A new card was printed that is the Nightmare and Bane of all targeted effects. This card is called Alternate Star. This card allows you to essentially call a card from this soul over the card that has it in its soul. This means that if your opponent calls, say, Loki the Air Guys, targeting your Radiant Guardian Jackknife Aster with its ability to remove all soul from that card, you may cast Alternate Star to call a unit from the soul, and the targeting of the original monster is going to fizzle because it's no longer on the field. Mind you, this applies to on-attack abilities like 100 Demon Sorcery No Brainer, which will cause the soul removal, destruction effect, and the attack itself to all fizzle on that target. I hope this clears up everything about targeting. If you still have questions, feel free to comment in the video and I can help answer them. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.